Welcome everyone to today's webinar, The Future of Automotive Technology Starts Now. We are honored to have you with us. Today, we'll be taking a closer look at the expected trajectory of automotive autonomy, as well as the role imaging radar will play in ensuring that the vehicles of the future are truly safe and autonomous. Our speaker today is ARBE'S Chief Business Officer, Ram Machness. Following his presentation, we will be happy to take your questions. Please submit your questions using the chat. Let's get started. Ram, the stage is yours.
Please read our disclaimer note. It will be also available on our website. So when we look at it, we were promised to have autonomous cars a while ago, but those cars are really not here. They are not here today, and it doesn't seem like they are coming really soon. We are going to talk today about the reasons why these are not here today. Instead of having autonomous cars, we're getting those kind of headlines and those kind of issues and accidents, terrible accidents, with some of the tries to do autonomous driving. And the root cause of that is the fact that our vehicles, they need to have perception. They need to understand the surrounding that is around the vehicle in order to be able to take the decisions, the right decision, where to drive and what actions they should take. They actually need to do it even better than humans, because we are okay sometimes with faults done by humans. We are not okay. We are not accepting faults of machines. So our expectation level is actually higher than human, that our machine perception will be even better than the human perception. We do not accept failures. What is the problem? What is preventing the perception from being able to really sense the environment and understand what's going around the vehicle? The major issue that is preventing the machine perception from being able to perceive the environment is actually the sensing. If we take, for example, the main sensor, the cameras, the industry did a great job with all the cameras. However, cameras, they are limited. They are limited, for example, on bad weather. If it's a fog, if it's rain, if it's a snow, if it gets blinded by other lights, if it's dark outside at night, cameras won't be able to provide 100% of sensing of the environment all the time. We need another sensor. And that's where radars started coming into the game. But if we look at today's radar, unlike the imaging radar that we'll talk in a second, if we look at those radar, they are actually a hazard. Instead of helping, they are actually making things, in many cases, even worse. They are extremely limited in the resolution. And let me explain a bit, what does it mean? It means that the radar doesn't see the details that are needed for perception. For example, we want the radar to see the height, the width of the vehicle in front of us. So we know if we can move to the side, if we can bypass the car in front of us. Today's radar, they are not providing this information. They are not providing the information of the height of an object. So for example, if I'm driving and there is an overpass or a bridge, and I want to look at the bridge, the radar doesn't understand if I can go underneath it or if it's actually a wall that I'm going to hit in 90 kilometers per hour. Today's radar, they don't have this understanding. Because of that, many of the vehicles that are using radar, they are actually ignoring the stationary objects. So they are ignoring bridges, they are ignoring traffic light, but then they are ignoring also police cars that are parked on the side. And this lack of resolution, the fact that we don't have this information of the width of objects, that we don't have the elevation, the height of objects, results in the fact that we are ignoring stationary objects, which is unacceptable by the perception. You can see here an example of an accident that happened when a car running an autopilot hit a police car that was parked on the side. The reason for that is that from some reason it was probably because it was at night, the camera couldn't see the police car, and then the radar, as we said, is ignoring stationary objects, and that's how this vehicle hit the police car. And we see many, many accidents of autonomous vehicles running on autopilot and hitting stationary objects. That's one good example of a problem. What we really want the car to be able to do is to understand where is the free space around it. And free space, this is something that I'm going to use in this presentation quite a lot. This is actually the space around the vehicle where the vehicle can go. And we are going to mark it in many of our videos as the green area that you can see in the picture. The free space, that's the fundamental information that the car needs in order to be able to make the right decision whether it can go or it needs to stop. This information is a vital information that today's radars are not providing. On top of that, we have a big problem with the current radars with the high false alarm rate that they are providing. They are actually providing a lot of information, a lot of cases where the radar is saying that there is an object, while in reality, there is no object. Here is an unfortunate example of a car hitting a pedestrian. Even though the radar itself was able to detect the pedestrian 5.6 seconds before the accident. However, because of the false alarm rate of the radars, the system decided to ignore the radar and decided not to act upon the radar input because of the false alarm rate. So the issues that we have with today's radar, they are not something small, they are not minor issues. These issues preventing the perception from using the current radar and preventing the autonomous vehicles or the autonomous vehicle features to become a reality. We have some companies that said, well, if the radar doesn't help us with the perception, maybe we should get rid of the radar altogether. But this leads to some really funny movies and videos that we can see of phantom objects and a car detecting a ghost in a cemetery, or a car detecting a traffic light, which is actually the moon, while an imaging radar would be able to tell the perception this is not a traffic light like the car thinks, and there is no object in the cemetery. But even though those videos look funny, there's nothing funny about it, because these are real accidents that are happening. And if we look at it, if we are going to keep using the current sensors, we will end with more accidents actually than fewer accidents, which is the purpose of all the sensors. These problems are actually solved by using an imaging radar. Imaging radar, even though the underneath technology is the same technology as regular radar, it's a totally different sensor. It's a much higher resolution and much lower false alarm rate than the current radar significantly. By using imaging radar, you can actually map the environment. We'll see some videos of that. And by that, you can avoid dynamic objects like other vehicles, like pedestrians, like motorcyclists, as well as static objects like the police car that we saw, as well as other obstacles that might be on the road, like a tire. On top of that, it helps eliminating the false alarm. That problem that we talked about, the regular radar, is significantly reduced when you're using an imaging radar, totally eliminated in many cases, by using high number of channels. We'll talk about it in a second. If we talk about the phantom braking issue of vehicles braking with no reason, that's part of the high false alarm rate. This is eliminated by using the imaging radar. We talked previously about the ability to understand the size of objects, whether I can go from the right, from the left, if there is space between two objects. The higher sensitivity and the higher resolution are really helping the perception team to understand where is the free space that the car can go and where is the occupied space where the car cannot go. These are really important items. If we look at it and compare the different sensors, which are cameras, LiDAR, and a regular traditional radar versus imaging radar, we see that once we're using the imaging radar, we're getting two things. One, we have a complete coverage from a perception perspective of all the aspects that are needed for perception. And the second thing is that we get redundancy to the camera. We are getting another source of information that the perception team can use on top of the camera that is an overlapping information, so they have higher ability to differentiate and understand exactly if there is an object or there isn't an object, and to take safer decisions. If we look at the different level of autonomy, these are commonly used in the industry, where there are 6 levels of autonomy in terms of the vehicles. It starts from level 0, where there is no autonomy at all, up to level 5, where there is no steering wheel at all. So the car drives itself and there is no way for human to intervene with that. There are 6 levels in between, starting from basic operations like emergency braking, then complex operations of steering and braking, that's level 2. And then we're talking about what is called unofficially level 2+, which is really important item. This is where the car can drive some of the time with the supervision of the driver. And that's where we are seeing most of the features coming into play in the next few years. That's where we'll see the driver letting the car drive in specific scenarios while he still supervises the car. Level 3 means that from that point there are several seconds where the car is in complete control, and if the car wants to release the control back to the driver, it needs to notify the driver. So there are periods of time that the driver doesn't have to be in control. Level 4, that means that the driver is mostly safety driver and the car drives itself. And level 5, there is no steering wheel at all. So when we look at the next few years, we see a lot of focus on level 2+, where there are autonomous features coming into the vehicles, and the car needs to drive for a certain period of time. In order to do that, the car must have perception, must have the understanding of the surrounding, and in order to get this perception, the car needs to have the imaging radar. And that's the play that is coming in the next few years. For level 2+, you must have perception. If you must have perception, you must have an imaging radar or redundant sensor. So when we look at the next few years, we're going to see a lot of the car changing from the level 0 to level 2 that they are today to level 2+, level 3, and then maybe later on level 4 and level 5 as well. And this is a major shift, because if you look at the safety of our families, once the car prevented an accident for you or for someone that you heard about that, you won't go back. This is a safety issue. This is a safety concern for people, and they would like to have the safety with them. When we look at those numbers, it's actually a complex of two numbers that are coming and making this hockey stick shift. Because first, we'll see a lot more vehicles having those features, okay? And the second thing is, if we look at the imaging radar, we'll see vehicles with several imaging radars in them. That means that we'll see really a hockey stick inflation of imaging radars coming into our vehicles very soon. If we look at the timelines, we see that the buying decisions, the moment that the brands, the OEMs are making decision is actually now. These systems are in development right now, and selections are being done right now. We see orders being placed, and this will increase in 2023 and in high volumes in 2024 as well. We see also other markets of imaging radar. Other than the vehicles, we see it a lot with trucks, autonomous trucks. We see some with delivery robots, and we see it with other markets as well. So the potential of the market, we are totally focused today on the autonomous vehicles, but actually it goes way beyond that. Where is ARBE play coming here with the radar revolution? So I mentioned a lot the imaging radar. What makes a radar an imaging radar? And the answer is simple. You need to see an image. That means that you need to look at the road and be able, using the imaging radar, see clearly the vehicles around you, the obstacles around you. Be able to map the free space that we talk about it. And the only way really to achieve it is by having a large number of channels. Think about channels in radar like pixels in camera. You need the resolution, you need the details in order to be able to understand what's going on around you. Today's radar, most of them are using 12 channels. Some of them are using 48. The coming generation is talking about 192. With ARBE'S solution, we are talking about 2,304 channels. This is an order of magnitude compared to what is out there or even coming very soon. By the way, we were the first one to announce it, but we see more companies saying exactly the same. For perception, companies like Mobileye said, you need an imaging radar, and to make the radar imaging radar, you need 2,304 channels. What's the problem with that? So, okay, let's put 2,000 channels. The problem is actually the processing power that you need in order to process. Today, and I'm getting a bit technical here, today in order to process 12 channels, you need a DSP. For 48 channels, you need a high-end processor. For 192, you need an FPGA. There's nothing that can really process in real time 2,304 channels. And that's where the unique and key advantage that ARBE is bringing to the game and to the market, where you have a dedicated processor that can process in real time 30 frames per second of 2,304 channels concurrently. So we are bringing the highest quality of a radar image in the market. We are creating a complete sensor suite that we'll talk about it. And we are the first one that are bringing perception algorithms on top of imaging radar and driving the revolution in this autonomy market. When we look at the layers of the solutions, we have the chipset, the silicon that ARBE is providing, which is the transmitter chip, the receiver chip, and the main thing, the processor chips. On top of that, we have a complete reference system that we are providing to our customers to start working with it. We have the 360 degrees perception that we are developing around the vehicles. with a really high quality image that we'll see in a second, and on top of it, perception algorithms to integrate the imaging radar with the perception team. So let's take a look a bit on the image coming from the imaging radar of ARBE. So here you can see the picture of the imaging radar of ARBE on a real road trip. On the right hand side as a reference you have the camera. On the center of the video you can see the imaging radar itself. You can already see the details. You can see the other vehicles coming. You can see the bridges, and you can see the level of details that the imaging radar is providing already with the current chipset that is unparalleled compared to the information that is coming from the current radars. And we're not talking only about a front-facing imaging radar. The companies are talking about having several imaging radar surrounding the vehicle in order to be able to see 360 view of the entire surrounding of the vehicle. Then we're talking about adding the perception on top of the imaging radar. And we can see this also in action. You can see on the left-hand side the green area where it's marked as a free space based on the radar only, not compared to the camera itself. So you can see how the imaging radar tells the vehicle exactly where is the free space. You can see the 4D resolution. You seeing the bridges. Remember we talked about bridges with the current radars that you cannot distinguish if they are upstairs or not. Clearly being able to do it with an imaging radar. You can actually see exactly how the road itself is structured. If there is a car standing on the right hand side of the road, this is something that the imaging radar will easily be able to detect. You can see here two people running. You would be able to see a man running with his dog, and all these details that are coming from the imaging radar and are not available today with the current radars at all. So these are fundamentals of the imaging radar that are not available with the current radars. The imaging radar platform that is coming from ARBE is the leadership platform today in the imaging radar space. It is built for the high volume, so the price point is really very affordable. Of course, it's a fully automotive qualified, and we are the first to the market to present these capabilities. Overall, if we talk about ARBE, ARBE is founded in 2015. We have 130 people working with us. Most of it is R&D based in Israel, and we are today engaged with several key players in the market to bring this technology to the market. As we discussed, imaging radar will play a critical role in enabling the quickly approaching autonomous future. We are thrilled to have you with us as we lead the way to the safest version of that future. Let's move now to the Q&A session. We are eager to hear your thoughts and questions. Please open your cameras and we will let you ask your questions live.
Thank you, Ram. Now we are eager to hear your thoughts and questions.
It seems like your technology is an improvement over alternatives, but still shy of the need. What are the next steps?
So basically, we are not behind what is needed, the other way around. ARBE'S technology today brings to the market the highest channel count that today is possible. 2,304 channels in a radar, which means the best resolution and the best performance in radar that exists in the market. The next competitor has an order of magnitude lower amount of channels. Our next generation of improvement is adding deep learning technology to the system, and with that, increasing the resolution and increasing the performance using neural net. This would be done in our next generation chipset that will be in production in 2025.
What alternatives to ARBE radar are auto companies planning on adopting?
So actually, I think that today it's clear to every car company that an imaging radar should be part of their entire stack. So there is the cameras, there is the LiDAR, there is the radar. In some cases, it's without the LiDAR, but it's clear that imaging radar is there. And if you want to implement the features of autonomous, you need an imaging radar. So today, the car companies are selecting between our radar and a competitor's radar that is built upon a chipset of TI or chipset of NXP, an older version of radars. And we believe that with those technologies, the actual features of autonomous driving or driving assistant won't be safe enough. So there is a clear need for this amount of channels and this imaging radar in order to launch the features and to have them safe enough that the user will buy them and adopt them.
Thank you. How much ARBE'S free space mapping processing happens on the radar, and how it reduces challenges of central auto processors?
So first of all, our processor has the ability to process also free space mapping and post-processing on top of the actual point cloud. It's a matter of car total architecture. If you have the free space mapping, of course, on the edge, on the front radar, the decisions that can be taken from the central computer are easier, and the processing power that is needed on the central computer is lower. By that, we are reducing the total cost of the system. We also increasing the time to action. So with the fact that this free space mapping is on the edge, decision can be taken faster, and the car can react much faster to the changes on the lane or on the way.
Great. Another question. Who are your current customers? How much interest are other OEMs showing in your solution? When will your solution be widely adopted?
So our current customers are AutoX that we announced, the leading robotaxi company in China and one of the leading players in US. Bike, Chinese car manufacturer, one of the largest car manufacturers in China, that announced that they will use our technology for level 2 plus level 3. And we have also another project in the States with a non-automotive company. Out of the leading top 10 car companies, we are in a pre-production stage with 2 of them, and we are shortlisted with another 4, and our technology is in evaluation with another 2. So out of the leading 10 car companies, in 8 we are in the process. The selections would be done by this year in majority of those projects, which means that you will be able to see our technology in action in year model 25, 26. The ramp up in revenues would come much earlier because basically we are set tier 2, so we are supplying chips to the tier 1s. The tier 1s take those chips and build from it a full radar module, and this full radar module is getting into a car. So basically we're beginning generating revenues more than 2 years before you are actually seeing the technology in the market. But the technology itself in the market in wide adoption will start in 24, 25, And as we are going through the decade, until the end of the decade, we will see much larger penetration for our technology.
Can't wait. Could you please provide ARBE'S revenue and profit projections? So I'll answer that. As we saw in Ram's presentation, the radar is the fastest, the most fastest leading segment in the automotive sensor market. The total available market for radars is expected to reach $11 billion in 2025. Our revenue model is aiming and reflecting revenue in the next year to be with revenue from early adopters and non-automotive customers. For the year after that, the revenue stream will come from Asian OEMs, which are early on production. And at the end of 24 and mainly in year 25, we expect the global OEMs mass revenue from the US, Europe, and Japan. We are still on track to reach our $312 million revenue goal. Related to the profit, our gross margin profit is expected in those years of mass production to be in the range of 60%, as this is the practice in silicon industry. Next question, what is the competition developing and when is it due for market consumption?
So the main competition with the next generation radar is Mobileye. Mobileye announced early this year that by 2025 they will have a radar with 2,304 channels, exactly the same amount of channels as we have, with dedicated processors that they are developing, like our ARBE'S processor. And we believe that by 2025 they will have a real competitor to ARBE. As I mentioned earlier, we are of course working on our next generation, and in 2025 we will already have our next generation processor for radar with our dedicated neural net algorithms on top of it that will provide a much better performance than what we have today going to production. I think we are at least 3 years ahead of the competition, and we are going to maintain this edge, I believe, for the next 10 years.
How do you see LiDAR complementary or competition?
So, very good question. So, I think overall it's not competition, because by the end of the day, the car companies are issuing different RFPs for different sensors. So there is an RFP for radar, there is an RFP for LiDAR. One player can win the LiDAR, other player can win the radar. One tier one can be in this position and the other tier one can be in that position. So from the customer's perspective, this is not competition. From practice, of course, I think if we will prove together with our OEM partners and our tier one partners that a full level 3 can be done safe enough with imaging radar and camera, this will reduce dramatically the need for a LiDAR in the market. Maybe as a redundancy to the camera, maybe for robotaxis level 4. But I think that by the end of the day, when level 2 plus level 3 will go to mass adoption, this would be done without a LiDAR, because the price of the LiDAR won't be able to get down to the levels that it can get into a real mass production car. And it will be a niche market, a high-end product. For level 4, for robotaxis, for trucks, for delivery robots, there is more room for those sensors in terms of the price. The other thing that needs to be considered here is the power consumption of the LiDAR that is high, and the processing power that the LiDAR is taking, especially on the central computer. all of those disadvantages is something that our imaging radar can solve.
Thank you. What is the expected financial development in terms of cash flow, working capital, cash needs? At what point would you need to think about additional financing? So actually our payment terms for production are about net 30. Our receivable payment terms varies between 60 to 90 days. So on average, we can see between 1 and 2 months of financing gap. In the business combination, we raised enough cash to take us through up until the break-even point of the company. And this takes into consideration the working capital that I just mentioned. Because we have and we expect significant amount of booking and solid backlog, we think that also in terms of future financing, we will have no issues using the traditional banking methods. Next question. The stock price has dropped in the past couple of months. What caused this drop?
So I think ARBE is not different from all of the stocks on the NASDAQ, and the fact that the share price is around 25% lower than the IPO price is actually a problem in the market and not problem in the company. And to prove it, a few days from now, the lockup period of our early investors should be end, and they decided together with the company to increase this lockup period because they understand, as we understand, and I think as everybody that looks into the fundamentals of the company understand, that the current share price is not really relevant to our performance and to our valuation. So the minority shareholders in the company decided to continue the lockup for another 3 months in order to give the market the opportunity to bring the share price back to where it should be. And I think that the $12, $13 that we were in Q4 last year is the real value of the company today. And in the next few quarters, with some winnings that we will announce, as well as the change in the market conditions, we will see the share back to where it should be.
I agree. When will ARBE break even and start sharing dividend? So based on the model and revenue that I've just described, the break-even point is expected end of 2023, early 24. Regarding dividends, so currently we do not carry any dividend policy, nor do we see such policy in the coming years. We do, however, based on the company's profit and retained earnings, we will make this policy in the future upon need. Will imaging radar enhance the adoption of autonomous driving in the less structured environments like parts of Africa? Do you see any emerging niche technology that will accelerate this adoption?
So actually, I think the main advantage of imaging radar is the fact that it can work in an unmapped environment, in any weather, any lighting condition, and any environmental conditions, including dust, snow, fog. The radar is actually working there. So I think, yes, the radar is the only way to adopt those technologies in those areas that the mapping is problematic and the LiDAR is problematic in terms of the cost. And this is also what showing the advantage of radar to other applications like heavy machinery, like construction sites, and all of those niche applications that the radar can really shine. Okay, thank you everyone for your time, engagement, and thoughtful questions. As we discussed, imaging radar will play a critical enabling the quickly approaching autonomous future. If you have any further questions or would like to contact us and discuss, we would love to hear from you. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.